You need to speak to a mortgage professional. You need to figure out the financial stuff before you look at houses.
Tend to come up. You want to talk about some of the misconceptions that people have? Because I think that's really where I want to hone in on of, this is a knowledge place to learn. So what are some things that continue to come up that you're like, man, isn't it so obvious for me and my lens, but what do you see?
Yeah, so a few common misconceptions that you even may have heard that are misconceptions are, I need perfect credit to buy a house. I need an 800 credit score. That's completely incorrect. The requirements are based on government guidelines, and it's not an exact science, so there is some margin for this, but for the most part, FHA requires a minimum of 580 on the credit score, and conventional or Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac requires 620 score minimum. And there's a lot more to it than that, but just to give you perspective, you don't need an 800 score. That's one common misconception. Number two, I'd say, is I need 20% down to buy a house, right? That is also far from the truth, right? Conventional loans, you can do as little as 3% down for first-time home buyers. Sometimes it's 5%. And then for FHA loans, you could do 3.5% down. And when I say FHA, conventional, those are terms that I throw around very, very often. But for a first-time home buyer, it's like, what's FHA and what's conventional? Those are two main types of loans that are commonly used for first-time home buyers. Now, that's down payment. So we went over credit score, down payment, and a lot of people think I need to make a lot of money to buy a house, which is also not the case. They generally want to see that you make, and this is a general rule of thumb, just keep it super simple. It's based on what's called the debt-to-income ratio, which I can break down. But
that's right.
They generally want to see that you make double what your mortgage payment is going to be, including all of your other debt. So for instance, my mortgage payment is $2,500, all of my other debt, the minimum payments on those are $1,000. So in total, that's $3,500 in total debt. I need to make double that. What is that? $7,000 a month, right? So that's, generally speaking, very, very simple for conversation, how debt to income ratios work. So you don't need to make, $200,000 a year to buy a house either. So those are just a few common misconceptions, and obviously there's a few more. Oh yeah, I would also touch on, all right, yes, I can buy a house with minimum down, but my monthly payment is going to be so much higher, and I should save for my 20% down payment. There's truth to that, and there's not truth to that, right? So every $20,000 that you put down is going to be about $100 difference in your monthly payment. So sometimes it makes sense if it takes me 2 years to save $40,000, right? And that's at a saving at a very aggressive rate. If it takes me 2 years to save $40,000, I'm only going to save $200 a month.
It's opportunity cost.
Exactly. And now what if I'm spending rent for those 2 years? So if I'm spending rent and I'm throwing down the drain, let's say $2,000 to save $200, you know what I'm saying? So there's pros and cons that you have to run, and it's important. The biggest advice that I can give any first-time home buyer, could also be another common misconception, is you need to speak to a mortgage professional. You need to figure out the financial stuff before you look at houses.
That's right.
Everything else does not matter until you figure out the financial information. You need to know financially what it looks like to buy a house before you go look at them, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I try and focus on for first-time home buyers, as you might have seen in that post that you're referencing.